San Francisco, 1969. Chinatown. It looked like an ordinary Tuesday morning. But before the sun reached its peak, something would happen on Grant Avenue that no one who saw it would ever forget. Chinatown didn't belong to the city the way other neighborhoods did. It belonged to the people inside it. Its borders weren't drawn on maps. They lived in habits, in routines, in silence. Every morning followed the same rhythm. Vendors arranged fruits with quiet precision. Restaurant doors opened, releasing steam and the smell of food prepared long before sunrise. Elderly men took their usual seats, not just to rest, but to confirm something deeper, that this place was still theirs. Because in Chinatown, survival wasn't history. It was routine. And on this morning, everything felt the same, calm, controlled, familiar. But beneath that calm, there was always tension. The kind that never leaves, the kind you learn to carry without showing it. Because the people here had learned something the rest of the city never understood. You don't wait for trouble. You expect it. Bruce Lee walked these streets like he walked through life, fully aware, fully present, no wasted movement, no distraction, every step measured, every glance deliberate. He wasn't heading anywhere. He didn't need to. Movement itself was the purpose. For 40 minutes, nothing unusual happened. Just the rhythm of Chinatown, the quiet resilience, the discipline of a community that had been tested too many times to ever relax completely. Then he turned a corner and saw something that didn't belong to the morning. An old man, a police officer, and a moment that had happened here far too many times before. The officer, Davis, was standing over Mr. Chen, a 73-year-old shop owner who had spent 31 years building something on these streets. And in seconds, that dignity was being tested. A foot pushed a box, not hard, but not gently either. A voice followed, cold, condescending, familiar. Mr. Chen didn't react. He didn't argue. He didn't even look up, because he already knew how this would end. The same way it always did, with nothing. Bruce Lee watched, and in that moment, he didn't move. Because sometimes the hardest thing to do is nothing at all. But what he saw didn't disappear when he walked away. It stayed with him. And 4 minutes later, that moment came back to find him. 4 minutes later, at the intersection of Grant and California, Officer Davis saw him. And something about Bruce Lee immediately bothered him. It wasn't what Bruce was doing. It was how he was standing, calm, relaxed, unbothered, like he belonged there. And to a man like Davis, that kind of confidence wasn't normal. It was a problem. So he crossed the street. Same walk, same attitude, same routine he had repeated dozens of times before. Except this time, he had chosen the wrong person. Let me see some identification. Bruce didn't argue. He didn't resist. He handed it over calmly because he understood something most people didn't. Not every battle is fought with fists. Davis looked at the ID, searching, not for truth, but for an excuse. Then came the words, the same words spoken on these streets for decades, words that carried history, humiliation, power. And this time, Bruce Lee didn't absorb them the way others had learned to. His expression changed. Not anger, not yet. Something colder, controlled, measured. And Davis completely misread it. He thought it was submission. He thought it was fear. He thought the moment was already over. So he did what he always did. He escalated. His hand moved fast, casual, and struck Bruce Lee across the face. Not hard enough to injure, but loud enough for everyone to hear. The sound echoed across the street. 2 children froze in a nearby doorway. Windows above began to fill with silent faces. Because everyone knew what came next. Nothing ever happened after that sound. Except this time, something was different. Bruce Lee didn't react like the others. He didn't step back, didn't look down, didn't disappear. He became still. Not the stillness of fear, the stillness of decision. And for the first time that morning, the situation stopped being routine and started becoming dangerous. There's a moment before every explosion where everything goes completely silent. This was that moment. Bruce Lee stood still. But inside, a decision had already been made. Davis stepped closer, confident, ready to finish what he started. He thought he was in control. He wasn't. Because Bruce Lee had already read the situation. Every angle, every movement, every outcome. And then his hand moved fast, direct, precise, not emotional, intentional. But Davis reacted on instinct. His hand dropped to his weapon, and in less than a second, a gun was pointed at Bruce Lee's chest. Everything froze. The street, the air, the people watching from above. This wasn't routine anymore. This was something else, something irreversible. Bruce Lee stopped mid-motion. Not because he couldn't continue, but because he saw something no one else was paying attention to. The children, still standing in the doorway, still watching, still frozen. And in that instant, the fight ended before it even began. Bruce slowly placed his hands behind his back. A choice, a controlled surrender, not to Davis, but to the situation. Because sometimes the strongest move is the one that prevents everything from breaking. Davis misread it again. Of course he did. He thought he had won, so he grabbed his radio and called it in. But what he didn't understand yet was that this moment wasn't over. It had just changed form. And in 6 minutes, everything would shift. 6 minutes later, another officer arrived, Officer Williams. He stepped onto the scene expecting routine. But what he saw wasn't routine. Davis, gun drawn, a man, hands behind his back, still calm. Too calm. Williams paused, because something about that stillness didn't fit. It wasn't fear. It wasn't submission. It was control. And then recognition began, slowly, piece by piece, until it hit him hard. He stepped closer, looked again, then quietly asked, "Do you know who this is?" Davis frowned, confused, irritated. Williams leaned in slightly and said the name, Bruce Lee. And just like that, everything changed. Davis's confidence cracked, then collapsed, because now he understood. This wasn't just another man. This wasn't just another stop. This was a mistake that wouldn't disappear. A moment that couldn't be buried. A decision that would stay with him. Slowly, he lowered the gun, holstered it. For the first time that morning, he was careful, measured, aware. He said something, an apology maybe. But it wasn't enough. It could never be enough, because some actions don't disappear with words, and Bruce Lee knew that. He didn't argue, didn't react. He simply accepted what the moment could offer and what it couldn't. Then he moved. Bruce Lee turned and walked away. No anger, no words, just movement. The same movement that brought him there. But now everyone watching understood this wasn't the same walk. Behind him, Chinatown returned to life. Vendors continued. Doors reopened. Voices resumed. Because that's what Chinatown does. It continues. Not because nothing happened, but because everything did. The children in the doorway didn't move. They watched him disappear down the street, and without realizing it, they carried that moment with them for life. The old man on the bench watched too, silent, unshaken, because he had seen this before. Not this exact moment, but the weight of it, the meaning behind it. Bruce Lee passed him. For a brief second, their eyes met, and in that glance, everything was understood. No words needed, because some things are too heavy for language. And as Bruce Lee disappeared into the morning light, the street looked the same, but it wasn't. Because something had shifted. Not loudly, not visibly, but permanently. And Chinatown carried it forward the way it carries everything, silently, completely, without ever putting it down. Because the real story of that morning was never about the slap or the gun, or even the name. It was about control, restraint, and the power of a man who chose not to destroy a moment, even when he could. And that choice is what made it unforgettable.